Okay, let's dive into this one. It starts back in January 2016, Mercer County, Ohio.
Right, yeah. A woman out walking her dog finds something just awful.
Bones. And they look human. Specifically like a dismembered spine.
Exactly. And that single grim discovery kicked off this whole years-long investigation, a search for who this person was.
And for the rest of the body, obviously. It eventually led to this really chilling confession.
But even with that confession, the full story felt murky, still questions, and unbelievably another death gets tied into this whole case.
It's just, wow. So the mission for this deep dive really is to try and unravel this. We're looking at the discovery, the investigation, the really disturbing details that came out.
And our sources here are mainly police records, investigation files, and some previously unseen footage, which gives us a pretty direct look at how things unfolded.
Okay, so that spine, for years, no ID. The DNA was in the system, but no matches.
Right, until 2020. So 4 years later, a cold case investigator finally gets a hit.
And it connects to Ryan Zimmerman, 21 years old, missing from Columbus, Ohio, since late 2015.
Imagine that call. The investigators contacting Ryan's father, Warren, finally giving him an answer, but what an answer.
Yeah, confirming the partial remains were his son, and then having to explain the state they were found in.
Horrific details. They had to tell him, the lower body, the arms, the skull, all missing.
And saw marks. Clear signs of dismemberment found on the bones they did have. Just bruised.
Unequivocal evidence of a violent act.
Which brings us to the people Ryan was living with right before he disappeared.
His roommates in Columbus, there were 3. Corey Buzzard, Sarah Buzzard, and Naira Jen Whitaker.
And these 3 become absolutely central to what happened next.
Okay, so jump forward now to August 2021. This is a really pivotal moment.
The police locate Sarah and Jen. They're married by this point, living at Sarah's mom's house.
And Sarah gets arrested, right, but it's on an unrelated theft warrant from out of state.
Yeah, but during that arrest, an officer asks this question, almost foreshadowing, asks about weapons in the house.
And Sarah seemed really nervous during that whole interaction. That was noted.
Meanwhile, Jen, at the same place, she's initially reluctant to even talk to the detectives.
So the detectives are there for Sarah's warrant, but they quickly pivot. They bring up the missing person case. Ryan Zimmerman.
And establish, okay, you all lived together back in 2015, Sarah, Jen, Corey, and Ryan.
It's worth noting, too, the investigators sometimes use the name Emma. This was apparently a name Ryan might have been using during transition.
Right, though his family hasn't verified that part. It adds another layer.
So Sarah and Jen give their first story about Ryan leaving.
They say Corey asked him to move out. This was back in September 2015.
Yeah, the reason being their relationship, Corey and Ryan's, had ended, and Ryan hadn't found a job. That was the story.
Jen adds this detail. Someone picked Ryan up in a car. But importantly, Ryan's own car was left behind at the apartment.
And that car detail, that's where their story starts to unravel almost immediately.
Because Ryan's dad, Warren, he found out something different.
Right. He discovered Ryan's car wasn't just left there, it got towed. A neighbor actually saw the tow truck.
Which completely contradicts Sarah's version, or at least the implication that Ryan just drove off in it or something.
It's a small detail, maybe, but it's the first clear inconsistency, the first red flag for investigators.
Then Jen kind of elaborates on Ryan's behavior before he supposedly left.
Describes him as withdrawn, reclusive almost, mostly staying in the spare room.
And she brings up Corey again. Suggests Corey regretted Ryan moving in the first place.
Yeah, and she connects it to this strained relationship concept Corey apparently had, a trifecta.
A man, a woman, and a trans woman. That was Corey's idea, according to Jen.
And Jen made it clear she wanted no part of that.
So it paints this picture of a really strained, maybe unconventional household dynamic, potential conflict simmering there.
Definitely hints at underlying tensions. Okay, so now the detectives have these inconsistencies.
And they confront Sarah.
Yeah.
Lay it out, the story doesn't add up. And then they drop the bombshell.
Ryan isn't just missing, he's deceased. And this is now a homicide investigation.
Imagine hearing that. They also tried contacting Corey, the other roommate.
But he lawyered up immediately, refused to talk without counsel present.
Okay, but the police had more than just inconsistent stories by this point. They had physical evidence.
Crucial evidence. Remember Sarah's old car? They tested the trunk liner back in July 2021.
And found reddish stains. Presumptively tested positive for blood.
Right, and this ties back to another inconsistency. Sarah initially claimed Corey was away the weekend Ryan supposedly left.
But that wasn't true, was it?
No. Turns out Sarah herself drove Corey to a hotel that weekend. The woman Corey was meeting confirmed it.
Wow. And there was more evidence, wasn't there? From the old apartment.
Yes, also found in July 2021, investigators searched the former apartment, Ryan's last known residence.
And they found latent blood residue in the bathroom.
On the floor, inside a cabinet. Faint traces, but definitely there.
So how did Jen react when they presented this?
Vehement denial, just completely denied it. But then she says something really bizarre.
What was that?
She brings up Google searches, claims Sarah was looking up things like painting with blood and liking drinking blood.
What? It's incredibly strange.
Ah.
And disturbing. Is she trying to shift blame here?
It certainly seems like a deflection, yeah. Faced with blood evidence in their old bathroom, she points to these weird, dark searches allegedly made by Sarah.
Okay, so the pressure is mounting. They confront Sarah again, this time with her own Google search history.
Yeah, what was in there?
Searches about how to start Ryan's car after it had apparently broken down. It's huge, connecting her directly to Ryan's vehicle after he was supposedly gone.
Faced with that, Sarah, she breaks.
Yeah. Her first confession, she admits getting angry with Ryan. He came out of the bathroom. She knocked him down, choked him, and then panicked afterwards.
So this initial confession presents it as like an impulsive act, an argument that went horribly wrong.
Kind of, yeah. But compare that to Jen's reaction.
Still denying everything.
Completely. Even hearing Ryan's dead, hearing about the blood in the car, the blood in the apartment, she maintains innocence.
She called it a fever dream, right? And asked that weird question about Corey.
Yeah, like, did Corey have them get rid of his issue? Trying to imply Corey was somehow behind it, maybe?
It's a stark contrast. Sarah confessing to violence, Jen denying and deflecting.
But then Sarah's confession, it gets much, much darker.
How so?
She brings Jen into it. Says Jen came upstairs after the initial choking incident, and together, Sarah says, they decided they had to get rid of it, meaning Ryan's body.
Oh, wow. So not just Sarah anymore.
No. And then she describes a dismemberment in the bathtub.
Using a saw.
Yeah, saw they found the shed.
Yeah.
Sarah claims she did most of it, cutting him up.
At the joints, right.
Yes.
Elbows, wrists, knees, ankles, neck. Methodical.
Horrifyingly so. She said Jen helped initially, but then felt sick during the process.
Whether that sickness was genuine revulsion or something else, who knows? But the detail is chilling.
So after the dismemberment, what did they do?
Sarah described putting Ryan's torso, along with some of his belongings, into a big Tupperware storage bin.
And putting that bin in Ryan's car.
Exactly. The plan, she said, was to drive Ryan's car to Illinois and just abandon it there with the remains inside.
But the car broke down. That detail from Sarah's search history comes back.
Right. It broke down at a gas station, which forced a change of plans. A really risky one.
They had to transfer the bin, the one with Ryan's torso in it.
From Ryan's car to Sarah's car, in broad daylight, at a gas station. The desperation there is just incredible.
So they get the bin into Sarah's car. What about the other body parts, the limbs?
Sarah said they disposed of those separately, put them in public dumpsters along the road, mostly at gas stations again.
But she was vague on the exact locations, right?
Understandably, yeah. But she was clear about one thing.
What's that?
The head, the hands, and the feet. They weren't disposed of like the limbs. They had a different destination.
Okay, that's ominous. So the investigators now have this detailed, gruesome confession from Sarah, implicating Jen heavily.
So they go back to Jen, confront her with Sarah's full story. The dismemberment, everything.
And Jen's reaction?
Still denial. Flat out denial. She accused Sarah of lying, making it all up.
Just steadfast. Even faced with that level of detail from Sarah.
Remarkable resolve. Or something else. But she stuck to her story.
So what happened next?
The detective who had initially arrested Sarah on the warrant, he returns to the mother's house where Jen is.
And they arrest Jen based on Sarah's confession.
Yes. They place her under arrest, read her the Miranda rights.
And then the story takes this absolutely shocking, tragic turn.
Unbelievably tragic. As she's being arrested, Jen pulls a handgun from her purse and fires a single shot.
She shot herself.
Yes, a single bullet wound to the back of the head. She died right there at the scene.
Oh my God, the radio call must have been just chaos, shots fired, ambulance needed.
A completely unexpected and horrific end to that confrontation. It means, of course, we'll never hear her side of the story directly.
Yeah, silenced. Okay, so Jen is deceased. What happens with Sarah?
Months go by. Then, with her lawyer's agreement, Sarah agrees to another interview.
A second interview. After Jen's death.
Correct. And this time, her story changes dramatically.
How so? She starts referring to Jen as Naira, right?
Yes. And in this new version, Naira Jen is the mastermind.
So she flips the script completely.
Pretty much. She claims Jen came up with the plan to kill Ryan on the morning of the 26th.
And Sarah's role in this new version.
She says she didn't take Jen seriously at first, but then got worried when Jen started gathering things.
Like what?
Trash bags, bleach, the handsaw.
The same saw from the first confession.
The same one. Sarah claims she tried to talk Jen out of it, but ultimately didn't stop her. Said she was scared of Jen, but also loved her.
So who actually attacked Ryan in this version?
Sarah still admits to jumping on Ryan initially, but then claims Jen used a bleach-soaked rag on him, possibly with vinegar to create toxic fumes.
A chemical attack, that's new.
Very new. Sarah says she then hid in the office while Jen handled the aftermath, putting Ryan's body in the bathtub, decapitating him, and then putting his head in the freezer.
Jen put the head in the freezer. That's horrifying.
A truly gruesome detail added in this second account.
What about the dismemberment of the rest of the body? How did Sarah explain that now?
She claimed Jen started to feel unwell again, having intestinal cramps.
Convenient timing.
Perhaps. But Sarah said she then took over the dismemberment process because Jen couldn't continue.
Okay, so now Sarah is doing the dismemberment but under duress, or because Jen is unwell.
That's her claim. She also said it was Jen's idea to put the hands and feet in a bag in the freezer.
Why? What was the reasoning?
To preserve identifying features, apparently, like fingerprints and dental records, potentially, although that doesn't quite track for feet. But that was the stated reason.
So Sarah puts hands and feet in the freezer and then dismembers the forearms and calves.
Yes. The disposal of the torso and the other limbs via the car and dumpsters remained mostly consistent, but now Sarah says Jen was directing her where to go.
So Jen is the director, the planner, the one who handled the head in this version.
Which leads to the discovery of the skull.
Where was it found?
In the garage of Sarah's mother's house. Inside a pot.
Just a pot.
A pot filled with some kind of thick substance, like lye, maybe? And the whole thing was wrapped in multiple layers of plastic garbage bags.
Oh, God. And Sarah maintained Jen put it there.
Yes. She insisted Jen was solely responsible for the head.
And she mentioned a pact between her and Jen.
Yeah, another chilling detail. Sarah claimed they had a pact that Jen would shoot Sarah rather than let her go to prison.
And she thought Jen was going to do it during the arrest.
Sarah said she saw it in Jen's eyes, saw the knowledge of that pact right before Jen turned the gun on herself.
Wow, just layers upon layers here.
And investigators confirmed Jen had purchased the lye mixture found with the skull. That lends some credence to Sarah's later account about Jen handling the head.
And the detail about hiding the head in the freezer.
Behind vegetables.
Yeah.
Just tucked away behind everyday food items. It's bizarre.
The contrast is just sickening. So what about motive? Did Sarah offer any clearer reason why this happened in either version?
It's still murky. In the second version, blaming Jen, Sarah claimed Jen had these really hateful feelings towards Ryan.
Like what?
That Jen felt Ryan didn't deserve to be out in the world to ruin someone else's life. That she was bothered by Ryan's perceived lack of effort in his gender transition.
That's incredibly harsh.
And allegedly called Ryan disgusting. Said the world was better off without him. Horrible sentiments.
But again, this is Sarah attributing these thoughts to Jen, who can't refute them.
Exactly. We have to remember that. It's Sarah's narrative after Jen's death.
What about Sarah's first confession? Why did she initially take the blame if, as she later claimed, Jen was the main driver?
Her explanation was, well, she said she wanted to protect Jen.
Protect her. By confessing to murder?
Yeah, she had this misguided idea, apparently, that if she took all the blame, Jen would somehow be okay, that things would work out for Jen.
Tragically misguided, especially given the outcome.
Completely. It speaks to a really complicated, maybe toxic dynamic between them.
And then there were those drawings Sarah made. Those add another disturbing layer.
Oh, right. The artwork. Very unsettling.
One was called Sacrificial Lamb. It actually predated Ryan's murder, but it depicted dismemberment, eerily predictive, almost.
And the other one?
A mermaid holding a human head, titled Till Death Do Us Part.
And she drew that while they were dealing with Ryan's remains.
Apparently so. While they were having to move the body parts, she also did a doodle of the saw they used.
That's chilling. It offers this really dark glimpse into her mindset during that time, or maybe even before.
So what was the final outcome for Sarah?
In January 2022, Sarah Buzzard pleaded guilty. Not to the initial version, but likely based on the accumulated evidence.
Fealty to murder.
Yes. Murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, the whole range. She was sentenced to life in prison.
With parole possible.
Eligible for parole after 30 years, so a very long time.
And Ryan's father, Warren, did he speak at the sentencing?
He made a statement, incredibly poignant. He just said that now his son could no longer be hurt.
Oh, heartbreaking. Just unimaginable pain for that family.
Absolutely. A final somber note in the legal process, but the loss remains.
So, looking back on this deep dive, it's just one disturbing element after another, isn't it?
It really is. You have the gruesome initial discovery, those shifting, contradictory confessions that just muddy the waters.
The absolutely bizarre and callous way the remains were handled and disposed of, that detail about the head.
And then the shocking suicide of Jen during her arrest, leaving so many questions unanswered.
Plus the motives that Sarah eventually described, that alleged hatred and judgment from Jen, are just deeply unsettling.
It leaves you with this profound sense of unease. This case really forces you to grapple with the complexities of truth and deception.
Especially when you have conflicting stories, and one of the key people involved is no longer here to give their account.
Exactly. Sarah's final narrative paints Jen as the monster, but how much is truth, how much is self-preservation, we can't be entirely sure.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is to consider that. How do these different versions, these alleged motivations, shape how we see this crime?
Yeah, and what does this whole horrific sequence reveal about, well, the capacity for human violence and the desperate, sometimes unbelievable lengths people will go to avoid consequences?
It's a dark one. A lot to think about long after the details fade.
Indeed. A truly disturbing case with layers that are hard to fully comprehend.